Okay, so for the last several days, I've been trying to complete this data visualization project, specifically the visualize data with a bar chart project, and I've been having a little bit of a hard time appending the x-axis and the y-axis to the SVG. So freecodecamp gives you a link to CodePen to how your bar chart should function in the end. It doesn't necessarily have to look like this, but it should function very similar to this. So you can see you have a tooltip on the right hand side of at the right hand side of the mouse, and you have all these rectangles or the bars that are on the bar graph. You have an x-axis and a y-axis, a title, and etc. So one of the things that I went ahead and did is I took a look at the code. And I know there's a little bit of controversy whether you should do this or not. I agree that you should try and build these projects by yourself first, but I was stuck on this project for hours, so I went ahead and looked at the code. So first and foremost, it looks like whoever did this is using an old version of D3. D3.json, if you look at the docs, it returns a new request to get the JSON file at the specified URL. Okay, so that's basically what this is doing, or what this is doing. But when I tried it this way, it didn't work for me. Because if you do this now, it returns with the latest version of D3, I should say, it returns a promise. So you can get away with this if you're using an older version of D3, but on the latest version, it seems to return a promise. So anyways, what I really wanted to focus on were these lines of code down here, 61 to all the way to 73. So, well, I mean 57 to 73. So first, what I want to focus on was this variable year's date. Here, it looks like what they're doing is they're returning a new array, and by iterating over the data.data, which again is the array that is provided from the callback here. So data is an object. So this data has a keyword data in it, and we can actually see that here. So you don't have to take my word for it. So we're going to console log data, right? Which first is just this argument here. So let's inspect it. Inspect it, and we're going to run it. And sure enough, it returned an error. I mean, it returned an object. So here we have this data keyword that is holding all the information that we need. It returns each array has a date and the number, which the number is the gross domestic product, apparently. Okay, so here they're getting the object, we're accessing the keyword data, which is returning all of these arrays here, and then we are returning, by using the new date constructor, we're returning an array of date objects. So, and to show you that, we're going to clear our console, and then we're going to get rid of our console.log up here, and console.log our year's date. So let's run that, and here is what we get back. It looks a little messy because it's, there you go. So here we are returning, we're getting back an array, and this is what the new date constructor returned for us, a bunch of data objects. That's perfect. Okay, so now that we know how 58 to 60 is working, or at least lines 58 through 60, here the console again. Okay, so our variable x max is, again, we're using the new date constructor, and they're using the D3 max method. And that method returns a new the max value in the given iterable order using natural order. And yes, I am reading that straight off the docs. I believe that's here. So returns the maximum value in the given iterable using natural order. And if you want to use d3.min, returns the minimum value in the given iterable using natural order. Okay, so let's go back to where we were, right here. Okay, so this is getting the max value from our year's date array using natural order. So let's find out what our max value is. X max. We're going to run that, and it looks like our max value is June 30th, 2015, right? So we know that this date is the very latest date in our graph that also has a gross domestic product data associated with it. So this is the very last array, basically. Okay. So here's what confused me. Whoever wrote this code also set the month by getting the month of our xmax variable and then adding 3. Okay, so right now you see that the latest, or the max value is June 30th. So we only have data that is associated with June 30th and any years previous to 2015, but we don't have any data showing for, let's say, July, August, or September. So we're going to console.log xmax now and see what happens. So as you can see here from console log up here, which when we put our console.log up here on line 63, it returned June 30th. But because we set the month by getting the latest month, which was June, and then adding 3, our new month is September 30th, 2015. So this person just moved the month from June to September by using this method here. And I was wondering why they did that. And then I figured it out. So basically, even though we have no data that correlates to this date here, it's moving the last tick marker here. And it's really more for visual representation than anything else. So instead of it having these two tick markers really close together, by adding those 3 months, it looks like this is really the end here. And I can show you that by actually playing around with the code here. So if we add +10 and we run it, see our line extends way over here, and there are no bars on top of the x-axis because we have no data that correlates that far ahead. So we're going to leave that at 3. I'm going to click run. Okay. So that makes sense. And then down here, we're using the variable xscale, and we're using d3.scale_time because this works really well when you're using an x-axis and it has dates. So you can read more about that if you go into the d3.js docs. We're providing the domain. Again, this should be our minimum value first, all the way to our max value here. And then we are going to give it a range so it doesn't go beyond our specified width. So here our specified width is 0 and our max width is whatever width is. So here you see width, this is a number which would be, I imagine, somewhere up here. Okay, 800. So all these dates that we iterated over should fit in between 0 and width. That makes sure that whatever information we provide up here will fit into that scale. Here we're using the variable x-axis. We're using axis bottom, which constructs a bottom-oriented axis, and then we're giving it the scale to use. So dot scale, and we're providing the x scale here. So we're saying, okay, the axis bottom, which is orient the axis on the bottom, and then give it this scale here. Okay. And then we're using x-axis group. We're appending I believe they call it a group element to the SVG. Then we're actually calling the x-axis. So finally, we're calling this function here, which is giving it the scale here. We're giving it the attribute of ID and calling it x-axis. And we're also giving it another attribute, which is transform. And we're translating it on the page 60 pixels on the x-axis and 400 pixels in the epsilon direction, so down. And that is how they got this beautiful x-axis.